The last piece of what started as a corruption puzzle in Detroit years ago is falling into place tonight with the sentencing of Bernard Kilpatrick. The father of ex-Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick hoped for probation, but he'll have to go to prison for 15 months.
You think that was fair, BK?
Fair? Is it more than a day?
In March, Bernard Kilpatrick was convicted of a single tax crime. The jury deadlocked on whether he was part of a racketeering conspiracy with his son, Kwame, and contractor Bobby Ferguson. The judge told Bernard Kilpatrick he was fortunate to escape conviction on the more serious charges because she said the evidence showed he was involved in many acts of extortion.
I disagree with it. I understand that there are always going to be competing points of view on that. She's entitled to her opinion.
Well, we think the judge made some very reasonable and fair findings given the evidence of trial. We believe the sentence, obviously, it isn't what we asked for, but we believe that it's merited by the facts that were brought forward during the case.
Now, in court today, Bernard Kilpatrick admitted he, quote, messed up. He doesn't have to start serving his 15-month prison sentence until after the first of the year.
Well, the FBI has been tight-lipped since the sentencing of the key players in the corruption scandal, at least until now. Only on 7 tonight, Action News reporter Simon Shaked goes one-on-one with a special agent who built this historic case.
For prosecutors here at the U.S. Attorney's Office and FBI agents, this case was historic and unprecedented. And now, for the first time since all 3 sentencings, the FBI is breaking its silence. A 6-month trial, a swift verdict, and a profound sentencing for what feds call monumental corruption.
I think it was a lot of time for a lot of crimes. And I think the judge really put a lot of time and thought into her opinion. If you think about it from the perspective of people who might want to do business here, might want to move a business here and employ people, if all they have is a negative reputation like that in Kilpatrick's legacy, that's a terrible negative effect on this area. So I don't think you can underestimate the harm here.
Special Agent Bob Beckman knows the effort that went into a case spanning more than a decade.
There were people in the beginning, when Kilpatrick was still in power, that expressed some reluctance to speak with us. They weren't as forthcoming. There were some courageous people that did so in the beginning, and we're thankful to them. And then after Kilpatrick left office, there was a marked change in people's willingness to cooperate and come forward. And
more cooperation from witnesses also played a big hand in bringing down other corrupt politicians. 35 convictions out of Detroit City Hall and counting. But what about contractor Bobby Ferguson? His sentencing, 21 years to Kwame's 28.
It put people out of business, and you know, his schemes cost people money. They cost people jobs. They did not give people jobs. So to watch someone's life work crumble because they didn't participate in a pay-to-play scheme, that's just tragic. That's as bad as it gets.
As for Bernard Kilpatrick, getting just 15 months in prison.
Never been able to look at cases that way, to say like, well, crime should mean different things to different people depending on how old you are, you know, or perhaps a punishment should be less to somebody who's elderly or something like that. I mean, those are decisions that people ought to think about before they enter into criminal activity.
And who could forget the text messages?
It was clear from the evidence that they didn't think those text messages would get revealed, so or they wouldn't have been sent in the first place. So yeah, there were quite a number of times when we would read a text message and say, well, that's it, that's the key to the whole thing. That explains all the other evidence that you have.
In the case of Kwame Kilpatrick's own family, the separation is not lost on the FBI.
And that's you know, collateral damage in any sort of prosecution, but it's collateral damage that's brought on by the defendant. He has himself to blame. I certainly wouldn't wish having an incarcerated parent on anybody. It's certainly not the children's fault.
Special Agent Beckman recognizes the team effort from many federal agencies and the U.S. Attorney's Office to bring this case to a close. He also says this is a great example of how the justice system works. In downtown Detroit, Simon Shaked, 7 Action News.